It was a Tuesday morning. You walked in early, like you always do. You had already finished the report your manager asked for. You had the numbers ready. You had the answers. And then your manager walked past you, stopped at your desk, and in front of everyone said, "I am not sure this is the direction we agreed on." You froze, because you did exactly what was discussed. You had the email to prove it, but you said nothing. You just nodded. And later that day, sitting in your car in the parking lot, you asked yourself the question that's been eating at you for weeks now. Why does this keep happening to me? Here's what nobody tells you. The answer to that question is not what you think it is. If you're watching this right now, there's a good chance you're sitting in a job you used to care about, feeling like you're slowly losing your mind. You're getting passed over. You're being second-guessed. You're doing the work and someone else is getting the credit. You're pulling long hours, staying focused, delivering results, and somehow it feels like the better you perform, the worse it gets. And you can't just walk out. You've got bills. You've got rent or a mortgage. Maybe you've got a family. The job market out there right now is no joke, and you know that jumping ship without a plan could set you back years. So you stay. And every day you stay, a little more of your confidence gets chipped away. It doesn't stop at work either. You bring it home. You're lying in bed at night, running through conversations in your head, replaying moments, thinking about what you should have said. Your partner notices you've gone quiet. You're snapping at people you love over nothing. You're exhausted, but you can't sleep. You're distracted during the few hours you actually have to yourself. This thing has spread beyond your job. It's inside your head now, sitting with you every single day. And that's exactly where this kind of boss wants it. So let's talk about what's actually happening here, because this is where most people get it wrong. They assume their boss is just difficult. Difficult is survivable. Difficult means high standards, bad communication, too much pressure. A difficult boss is hard to work with, but there's logic to it. You can adapt to difficult. But what you're dealing with is something different. A toxic boss isn't just hard to work with. A toxic boss actively works against you. There's a pattern, there's repetition. And here's the part that's going to hit you, it's personal. Not because of who you are, but because of what you represent. This is where it gets strategic. Start paying attention to the pattern of the behavior you're experiencing, because toxic bosses operate on a predictable playbook. You'll notice that your ideas get dismissed in the room and then presented by someone else a week later. You'll notice that you get blamed for things that were never your responsibility to begin with. You'll notice that the expectations placed on you keep shifting, but they only shift after you've already met the last ones. You'll notice that your successes get minimized while your smallest mistakes get amplified. You'll notice that you're left out of meetings, decisions, conversations that you should absolutely be part of. You'll notice that the feedback you receive is never constructive, it's just criticism with no path forward. You'll notice that when you try to get clarity on what's expected, you get vague answers and then get penalized for not meeting expectations that were never actually defined. If you're nodding right now, that's not a coincidence. That's a pattern. Now here's the psychological truth that nobody wants to say out loud. Your boss doesn't go after the weak ones. They go after the ones who could outshine them. Toxic bosses are fundamentally insecure people with power, and when they look at you, they don't see an employee. They see a threat. Your competence reminds them of their own limitations. Your ideas make them feel irrelevant. Your work ethic makes them look lazy. Your potential makes their ceiling visible, and that terrifies them, so they don't try to build you up. They try to manage you down. They keep you second-guessing yourself so you never build enough confidence to challenge them. They take the credit for your work so they look indispensable. They undermine you publicly so others don't see your full capability. This is not random. This is a control strategy. And the moment you understand that, you stop taking it personally and you start thinking like a strategist. Here's what most people do when this is happening to them. They react. They get emotional. They try harder to prove themselves. They push back in the moment. They vent to coworkers. They go home and cry or rage or both. And every single one of those reactions plays right into the toxic boss' hands. Because when you react emotionally, you look unstable. When you push back in the room, you look difficult. When you try to prove yourself by working harder, you just give them more material to take credit for. This is where most people lose. Your real advantage is staying calm when they expect you to break. So here's how you start to think about this differently. The first thing you do is mentally separate your value from their opinion of you. Your boss' perception of your work is not the truth. It is a political move. Every piece of criticism, every dismissal, every bit of public undermining is information about them, not about you. Start treating it that way. The second thing is you control every single response you give. Before you respond to anything your boss says, especially in the moment, you pause. You breathe. You give nothing away emotionally. If they push you on something in a meeting, you don't defend yourself in real time. You say something like, "Let me review this and get back to you with the details." That's it. You're not agreeing. You're not apologizing. You're buying time and removing the emotional charge from the situation. If they give you unclear instructions and then blame you for getting it wrong, you stay calm and you say, "I want to make sure I get this right. I'll confirm the priorities in writing and follow up before I move forward." Again, calm, professional, forward-moving. What you're doing is refusing to give them the reaction they are fishing for, and you're quietly starting to build something extremely important, which is a paper trail. Let's talk about documentation, because this might be the most practical thing in this entire video. Every single interaction that feels off, you write it down. The date, what was said, who was there, what the original instruction was, what actually happened. You follow up every verbal conversation with an email. You don't make it dramatic. You keep it clean. Something like, "Just following up on our conversation today to confirm the direction on this project." That email now exists. It has a timestamp. If something goes sideways later and suddenly the story changes, you have receipts. The goal isn't to build a case against your boss today. The goal is to protect yourself and to make sure that anyone who later reviews what happened sees the actual facts, not the version your boss chooses to tell. Now let's talk about how you set boundaries without making it a confrontation, because there is a way to do this professionally. When your boss gives you an unreasonable ask, something that's outside your role or beyond the scope of what was agreed, you don't say no out loud, and you definitely don't say it emotionally. You frame it as a resource question. You say something like, "I want to make sure this gets done properly. If I take this on, which of my current priorities should move down the list so the timeline works?" Now you've said no without saying no. You've made the problem theirs to solve logistically, and you've put the decision in writing by following up on it. Here's the honest truth about HR. And I am going to say this plainly because most people waste months hoping HR will save them. HR does not exist to protect you. HR exists to protect the company. When you walk into HR with a complaint about your boss, the first thing they are thinking about is liability, consistency, and optics. If your boss has political capital in that organization, which toxic bosses often do because they are skilled manipulators, your complaint might get filed away. You might get labeled as difficult. You might suddenly find yourself on a performance plan that came from nowhere. Going to HR is not always wrong, but you need to go in with documentation, not feelings. You need to have a specific pattern of incidents on paper. You need to keep it factual and clinical. And you need to be realistic that the outcome might not go the way you hope. Know what you're walking into before you go. Which brings us to the long game, and this is the part that actually matters. Survival mode is not the end game. Your real move is building the exit while staying in the game. You start with skills. What are you learning right now that's going to matter in your next role? If the answer is nothing because you're too burned out just getting through the day, that's a problem you need to fix. Even 1 hour a week, even one course, even one certification. You are not just surviving the situation, you are quietly preparing to outgrow it. Next, you invest in visibility outside your immediate team. Build relationships with people in other departments. Show up in cross-functional spaces where your work can be seen by people other than your toxic boss. Get involved in projects, initiatives, communities of practice, anything that puts your name in rooms your boss doesn't control. Your reputation inside this company cannot live or die by what your boss says about you. At the same time, you start your quiet job search, not a panic search, not a desperate application blast. A strategic, intentional search. You update your resume. You talk to people in your network. You go to coffee meetings. You take calls. You stay warm with your contacts so that when the right opportunity shows up, you're not starting from zero. You're ready. And here's the hard truth you need to hear at the end of all of this. Toxic bosses rarely change. They don't wake up one morning and realize what they've been doing. They don't get humbled into becoming better leaders. In most cases, the behavior you're seeing right now is the behavior that got them to where they are, and the organization has rewarded it. You are not going to fix them. You are not going to outlast them through suffering. You have exactly two real options here. You learn to manage the situation strategically while you build your way out, or you leave before it costs you things you can't get back: your health, your confidence, your sense of who you are. Neither of those options is giving up. Both of them require you to stop waiting for things to get better on their own. The smartest thing you can do right now is stop asking why this is happening to you, because you already know. You're good at what you do. And somewhere along the way, the wrong person noticed. Now you know what that means, and now you know what to do about it.